Good evening. We bring you the latest in the world of sports. I'm Paulo Del Rosario.
We give you the conversations you want to hear from your favorite icons and athletes. I'm Diego Dario. Watch the game live and our past episodes on demand on the Pilipinas Live app for just 99 pesos a month. Available for download on Google Play or the App Store.
Buckle up, sports fans. Let's get in the game. Oh, can you believe it? In just 8 days, Gilas Pilipinas will face off against international teams in the biggest basketball event of the year. Now, here to give us the top international players to keep an eye on in Group A in particular is basketball analyst Coach Norman Black. Coach, welcome to the game.
Welcome back to the game, Coach.
Really appreciate you. You know, I grew up watching this guy alongside my dad, both as his coach and his player. And yeah, I just love it every time I'm alongside Coach Norman. So let's get on the business, Coach, because this is incredible in terms of the challenge here for Gilas Pilipinas. Let's start off with the Dominican Republic first. We're gonna ask for a little scouting report of who to watch out for the most, and I think this is probably the team that we already know in particular who to watch out for the most coming from the Dominican Republic.
Yeah, I think it would be Carl Anthony Towns.
Who's that guy?
I think everybody knows him.
Right.
Plays for the Minnesota Timberwolves in the NBA, and was the #1 pick a few years ago in the league and Rookie of the Year. So he has the credentials coming over. I think he averaged 21 points a game this year, 8 rebounds a game. And he is self-acclaimed to be the best big man shooter in the history of the NBA.
Not sure about that, but you know.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that one, but especially this particular year, he went down a little bit. He shot about 35%, but he has been up in the 40% range for almost his entire career. So he is a really good shooter. And he's not just a shooter. He can also get to the offensive boards. He can play inside. He's pretty athletic for his size. So he's going to be a handful.
Well, Coach, you've had experience, you know, playing and coaching internationally and here in the Philippines. But when you talk about Carl Anthony Towns, you watch a lot of NBA too, Coach. The game is very different. You know, the rules are different here in the FIBA. You can pack the paint. How do you think, are we going to see a different kind of Carl Anthony Towns when it comes to the FIBA game compared to the NBA game, Coach?
Well, remember, in the NBA, he's playing with Gobert. At the center position. So he plays more of a 4. And he's really on the outside. He takes outside shots. He takes three-point shots. But in this particular contest, in this particular event, he's more of the big man for his team. So I expect him to move more inside like he used to. I think he can dominate inside if he wants to, but at the same time, he can make outside shots. So I think he'll make the adjustments. They always say it's a different game, this FIBA compared to the NBA, but in a lot of ways, it's still the same.
So so should we not expect any, I guess, adjustment time for Carl Anthony Towns, who hasn't played international basketball in around 10 years?
He's an all-star.
21 points and 8 rebounds in the NBA, they equate to a pretty good performance in this particular tournament. So I expect him to play well.
Yes. We gotta ask that though. Of course, now we move on to Italy here. So I'm gonna help everyone out here with the pronunciation because we got a jazz man to be introduced here.
Simone
Fontecchio.
Yeah,
so Simone Fontecchio, interesting guy here. Well, I know a bit about him, Coach, but then what stuck out about him when you looked him up?
Well, when you first see him, he looks like a player. You know, he stands straight up and down. He's got a nice body. He's tall, long neck. You know, he looks tall. He stands about 6'7". He's about 210 pounds, so he does have some size on him. He has some heft on him. He averaged 6.3 points per game for Utah, 1.7 rebounds, 1 assist a game. But he's considered to be a great shooter, particularly in international basketball, where he shot about 45% in the Euro games and also in the Olympics. He doesn't shoot as well in the NBA. He only shoots about 34% from 3 in the NBA. But at the same time, we're playing FIBA basketball, so that line's a little bit closer, and it's going to be a little bit easier for him to knock down shots. But he's considered to be a knockdown shooter from the perimeter.
When you talk about Simone, Coach, and you know this Italy team and European teams, Coach, you've had a lot of experience going up against different European teams around the world. You know, how important is that three-point shot that you said Simone is going to be, you know, looking for in this tournament in terms of like winning games here in the FIBA World Cup?
Well, the first thing I think about when I look at Italy is it's not just going to be Simone here. I mean, they have a good team. Even Melli is a good player, former NBA player who plays for them. And I looked up some tape on them, and you know, they really shoot the basketball really well. They're all good three-point shooters, so that's something they're going to utilize. In addition to that, they do have size.
Right.
So it's not like they're a small team. So they have a combination of having size inside and also being able to hit the three. So they're going to be one of the favorites going into the tournament.
Yeah, Coach, you take a look at the fact that we did identify Simone Fontecchio, but then do you feel that this is not necessarily a team that would rely on one or two guys, and that it should really be more of, I guess, defending the entire team and defending the three-point line?
Well, they have a few guys who have actually played in the NBA but aren't in the NBA now.
Yeah.
So it's not just Fontecchio we're talking about as being their only talent. They have a talented team. They have a big team. When I was with Coach Tab as an assistant a few years ago, we actually played against them in Italy, and they were tough. They were very, very tough. So I think they have to be one of the favorites going into this group and into this tournament.
Yeah, so we're now going to move on to a guy here that actually, Coach, Diego is more familiar with. Because Diego did play against Angola, and he did play against this particular player, Bruno Fernando.
Right, in 2014 when we made it to the World Cup for the youth games, Bruno Fernando was in that team, in that Angola team, but he wasn't like the star player yet of that team, but he was already like a presence inside. Like he would get rebounds, get blocks, but now, Coach, looks like a totally different player. He's an NBA player, Coach.
Well, he's been in the NBA for quite a while now, for a few years, and he's 6'10", 240 pounds. Wow. So he has a little bit of size on him. He's only 25 years old, despite the fact he's been in the league for a while in the NBA. And this past year, he ended up with the Atlanta Hawks at the end of the year, averaged 4 points, 3.5 rebounds a game. But I looked him up also, and I studied some of his tapes. And even though he gets most of his points inside the paint, he's not just an inside player. Yeah. He can actually take you off the dribble and get to the hoop. So that's going to be a concern as far as I'm concerned. Who's going to actually guard him? And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But he's not the type that just dominates inside. I mean, he's got a nice little hook shot around the basket. He can get points inside the paint, but he's very good off pick and rolls, diving to the basket, and he's also very good at spacing up and attacking.
Coach, do you feel that he's going to be the guy for Angola here? He's not necessarily a main option for the Atlanta Hawks. Some people do struggle once they're made the main option for any team. Do you think that Fernando will play a bit of that role, though, when it comes to Angola?
Angola does have other good players. Their point guard is pretty good. They have a small forward that is also very, very good, who was MVP of their league just a couple of years ago. And what I'm expecting is we cannot take that team for granted. We cannot take Angola for granted because we're all looking at it like, oh, that's the one where we can get a win. Hey, they're also good, and they have an NBA player backing them up. So we have to make sure that we are prepared, and we make sure that we're really going to go out and play really hard against them.
Yeah. And Coach, we talked about the individual players that we are going to be looking out for matching up with Gilas. But when you talk about like the different styles that we're going to be seeing here in the World Cup, you've had a lot of experience, 20, 30 years coaching internationally, Coach. You know, how does that play into the World Cup when it comes to like European style players and teams from Africa? How does that differ when it comes to their play style, Coach?
Well, if I would compare it to the Philippine team, obviously we're still running a lot of the dribble drive, attacking off or using our quickness and our speed to attack off the dribble. And you know, if you've looked at the games of the USA coming into this tournament, they're running a very similar style, where they're really just pushing the ball up the court and trying to get into quick offense, trying to get into quick attacks. I think that's what we're going to do. What you see in the European teams a little bit more is you see execution as far as plays are concerned. Sometimes the first, second, third movement is not really the movement they're trying to get the score off of. Sometimes it's the fourth movement. So they play the game a little bit differently, but you've got to take into consideration the European teams have size. So they're going to pound us inside, particularly, you know, guys diving off pick and rolls and maybe a little bit of post-ups for their bigs, and that's something we're going to have to contend with.
Well, we'll look forward to that, Coach. I mean, always great having conversations. I learn a lot from you, Coach, just like in practices and now here in the game. But we'll still have Coach Norman, because who can match up with these international players that we talked about from Gilas Pilipinas? Coach Norman breaks down some matchups when we return. Keep it here. You're watching The Game. Welcome back. You're watching The Game. We listed down the top international players to keep an eye on in Group A of the FIBA 2023 World Cup. So, let's jump off Coach Norman's list, but this time let's see who their potential matchups will be for Gilas Pilipinas. Coach Norman, we're talking about defense here, your favorite part of the game. Always been the favorite part of Coach Norman. But when you see the defense, of course, when you talk about the qualifiers, the exhibition games that we had, what can you say about our team's defense so far?
I thought our defense was just a little bit ahead of our offense, to be quite honest with you. I like the fact that a lot of times other teams could not get penetration because we had guys lined up.
Right.
And if they were going to shoot, they had to shoot from the perimeter, but they weren't able to get to the basket. Of course, the competition we played against in these exhibition games is a little bit different than what we're going to be playing against in the World Cup. But at the same time, you could see the defense was pretty solid. Our offense, well, we didn't make the outside shots as much as I would like, but at the same time, Clarkson is now part of the team, so that improves that area a great deal because he is a perimeter player, he is a perimeter shooter, he should help our outside shooting.
Yeah, so let's go through this from a degree of difficulty standpoint. The most difficult player, at least on paper, to defend will have to be Karl Anthony Towns of the Dominican Republic. Coach, I don't know how we can game plan for this to really stop him, but then how do you contain him?
I don't think we're going to stop him. There's no way that's going to happen in this tournament because it's not the Minnesota Timberwolves where the ball's being shared by Ant and by Gobert and everybody else in that team. No, he's going to be the focus offensively for their team. So he's going to get most of the touches. The offense is going to run through him. He's going to get his shots. Personally, my biggest concern is where will he play? Will he go back to the center position and play inside? If that happens, then of course, it's probably going to be Kai and Jumar, who's actually going to have to pick him up. And they're also going to have to move out on the floor and guard him from the three-point line. So it's going to be a little bit difficult. But if he starts playing from the outside, then of course you have Joppet out there that can guard him. You have A.J. Edu that can guard him from the perimeter. So it depends on where he plays on the floor. We'll just have to adjust once we see it.
Coach, I just want to pick your brain on this because, when you were playing, you were a dominant big man, Coach, and whether it's a little bit taller than you or a little bit shorter than you, Coach, you've guarded and dominated all those matchups, Coach. But when you're trying to guard a bigger guy, I'm just curious, what are the things that you have to do? Because as a coach, you love the details. You love to teach us the details, Coach.
Well, I did play in a lot of conferences in the PBA where it was unlimited imports.
Right.
I played against the big guys, and the one thing you have to do is have a good base. So you got to stay low.
Right.
If you stand straight up and down, the big guy will just push you out of position and just put a hand in your back and just move you. So you have to stay down low, get a good base, and then just make sure you have good, strong forearms.
Right.
That's the only thing you have to keep them off of you. So it's always a challenge when you're going up against bigger players and bigger teams. But at the same time, I think if you can just discuss the fundamentals and more importantly, what's your game plan for the bigger guys? What are the coaches coming up with where, you have a little bit of help behind the initial defense that you're putting up against that player? So if the coaches come up with a good game plan, they have help defense coming in, as long as you don't get, I would say, dominated with just one dribble score, then they should be able to defend the big guys.
Now, we move on to a guy who's more of a guard or wing in terms of the way he plays in Simone Fontecchio for Italy. Who do you assign to this guy? How do you guard a player that honestly is going to be one of the marked guys in terms of three-point shooting?
I think the first thing is we should note that the team hasn't been chosen yet. So, guys that I might think could guard these guys may not even be in the team. I have no idea at this point.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I can tell you who I think should be in that position, particularly with this Fontecchio. Obviously, number one is Clarkson. That's his teammate. Clarkson should know him better than anybody else in this tournament. So if he has to come and guard the guy, he should be able to guard him. But we do have Malonzo. Very athletic guy who can guard bigger guys. He stands about 6'5", so he can actually match up. You're only giving up a couple inches. Abando, another athletic guy that we have. Oftana also gives you athleticism. Pugoi gives you a little bit more strength as far as being able to go up against a guy at that size. And of course, CJ's much smaller, but he has the athletic ability to keep up. So we have a lot of guys that can guard the wingmen. We're used to guarding those anyway in the PBA.
Right.
It's going to be the big guys who's really going to be the problem for us.
Well, Coach, the players that you mentioned actually can guard multiple positions, and I just want to ask, how important that is in a short, tournament like the FIBA World Cup, guarding multiple positions, guys who can do multiple different things.
Well, I don't want to overstep because, like I said, the team hasn't been chosen yet.
Right.
But a guy like Malonzo becomes so important
Yeah.
because now he can guard smaller guys. He's quick and fast enough, but at the same time, he's athletic and tall enough to guard bigger guys, particularly at the 3 position. So he becomes very, very valuable as far as how you're going to defend the other team. It's guys like him that, they're versatile. They can go both ways. They can guard big, they can guard small. That will really help you on defense.
Yeah, we mentioned the fact that they need to be able to defend multiple positions here. And with a team like Italy that we all know, based on watching any of the tape, based on even their history of them playing, they do move around off the ball a lot. They do move around.
Yeah.
They do find ways to score off the dribble, but also finding the spot up shooters. Coach, when you deal with that type of movement defensively, just what do you feel is most key for Gilas, especially with some of the guys that you mentioned?
Well, I'll go back to what I said to you earlier about the forearms.
Right, yeah.
Because that's really important because defensively, it's not always one-on-one matchups. The coach may say, let's switch everything.
Yeah.
On pick and rolls, let's may show hard and go under, whatever. There may be matchups where you're going to have to switch defensively, and you may have to guard a bigger guy for a short period of time, or you may have to guard a smaller guy for a short period of time. If you're guarding a bigger guy, it's important that you're strong enough, and that's why I mentioned Pogoy's name earlier. He has the upper body and the strength that he's not going to be pushed around even by a 6'7" guy. So he can actually switch off on some of these screens. So the coaches have to evaluate that.
Right.
I mean, who's more versatile on defense? Who can switch?
Right.
Because when you can switch and get away with it, that could be a big part of your defense.
For sure, so many factors that come into play. We look at the next guy here on the list, Coach, Bruno Fernando. Who do you think is going to be matching up with him? A little bit of a different type of player compared to Karl Anthony Towns, for sure.
Yeah, I think this may be a little bit easier for our bigs than going up against Karl Anthony Towns because Karl Anthony can go out and shoot the 3. I think with Fernando, he's more of an inside player. I mean, the way I look at him, face up from the perimeter, 20 feet, quick dribble, get to the basket, score. But it's going to be near the basket. He's not really taking threes. He's not outside taking 3-point shots or setting screens and diving.
Yeah.
Right.
Those are going to be his 2 strengths. Now, against smaller teams, he may be able to get it down low and shoot his little jump hook. But at the same time, I think his quickness off the dribble to get to the paint or his pick and roll ability is what's really going to be there for him. And that's something we're going to have to prepare for and try to defend. How are we going to defend that pick and roll if he's the one setting the screen?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, does his man drop? Does his man show? Or does his man switch? We're going to have to decide on what type of defense we're going to use.
Well, Coach, you did mention the type of pick and roll defense, and I think that will be incredibly important for all of the games, considering the amount of shooting present in the FIBA game right now. We saw, I know this is a nitpicking a bit, but then we saw in that the Chinese tournaments that we played in, was that we did drop a lot. But do you feel that right now, with the versatility of some of our guys, that we're going to see more than just drop coverages from Gilas in the upcoming World Cup?
Well, I think with certain players, you don't have a choice. I mean, you don't want Jumar Fajardo out on the floor trying to guard a guard. So drop defense for him and Kai are probably the best defenses you can use. You don't want them switching. You don't want them pushing up.
Right.
You don't really want them showing out because it might be hard for them to show out and then get back into the paint to get back to their defender or to the guy they were guarding. So drop defense is the easiest for them. I think things will change when Japet is guarding the pick and roll.
Right.
When the other kid,
AJ Adu.
AJ Adu is guarding the pick and roll. When those guys are guarding, you'll probably see more versatility on how we handle it. There may even be some switching. But the 2 big guys, drop defense is probably what you're going to see. At the very least, maybe push up and go under the screens if we're playing against guards that can't shoot so that they can at least stay with their big men.
Right.
But at the same time, you have to form your defense based on your talent.
Great point, Coach, because I think AJ Edu switched on a lot of the ball screens in that Chinese tournament. Lastly, Coach, just quickly, you don't have to name names here, but when you talk about trying to build a Gilas team, when you're trying to build a team for international, for sure it's going to be different when trying to build for, professional local basketball here. What are the things that you're trying to look at when you're trying to build a team built for international basketball?
Well, first you're looking at the talent you have
Right.
available to you. In this case, it's been a little bit difficult for Coach Chuck because some of that talent just became available just recently,
Right.
even though he's been having the team trained for a while.
Yeah.
I mean, some of the key guys just showed up just recently. But you got to locate your talent. How can you utilize that talent? What's their strengths?
Right.
We're still running the dribble drive, so we're still trying to get off the dribble and beat guys off the dribble and try to attack. And if they help, then we're looking for jump shots, or we're looking for quick pick and rolls at the same time. But then you have to analyze who you're going up against
Right.
Yeah.
and how you're going to form your team based on that.
Well, Coach, we really appreciate all the insight. We can't wait to hear more from you during the FIBA Basketball World Cup. And of course, again, just really excited for the World Cup in general. Really appreciate you here.
Thank
Nice
you,
to be
Coach.
here, guys. Really appreciate it. Thank
For
you.
sure,
Thank
Coach.
you.
All right, so after the break, we'll get more updates on the upcoming 2023 FIBA Basketball World Cup. Stay tuned. You're watching The Game. Welcome back. You're watching The Game. The FIBA Local Organizing Committee is preparing a 4-day clinic for referees participating in the FIBA Basketball World Cup 2023. FIBA head of refereeing Carl-Jurgen Brand and refereeing consultant Thomas Rimkus will join FIBA Local Organizing Committee sports and competition head Eric Altamirano to lead seminars, drills, and practice games. These are aimed to prepare game officials both physically and mentally for the 3-week-long tournament featuring 32 teams. After the 4-day clinic, 11 referees will be assigned to each of the 4 venues: the Smart Araneta Coliseum, the SM Mall of Asia Arena, the Okinawa Arena in Japan, and the Indonesia Arena in Jakarta.
On the other side of the floor, thousands of fans from all over the world are arriving soon in Manila to be part of the FIBA Basketball World Cup 2023. The local organizing committee has secured a partnership with major providers PLDT and Smart to keep up with the traffic expected from the high volume of spectators. FIBA has requested the local organizing committee to provide very broad and far-reaching connections, which includes fixed and wireless connectivity, augmenting the supply of IT equipment, and a mobile app for fan engagement in collaboration with Infront, the marketing partner of FIBA. Fans can rest assured that they will be connected, stay connected, and experience everything that the FIBA World Cup can offer right at their fingertips. And that's it for tonight. Thank you for joining us. I'm Diego Dari.
Catch us weeknights here on One News and on the Pilipinas Live app, where you can watch us live and our past episodes on demand for just 99 pesos a month, available for download on Google Play or the App Store. I'm Paulo Del Rosario, and this has been The Game.